All right, so here is from the pictures from your next email. I'm going to see how much I can get through. My videos always time out at 15 minutes, and I feel like that is probably more than long enough for you to sit and watch. So we'll see how much of this we can get through in 15 minutes, and then we'll update again next week. So on this page, state whether the slope of each line is positive, negative, or zero. So a positive slope, um, I'll just switch over to here. So positive slope means that the line is increasing from left to right. So this is a positive slope. Negative slope would be the opposite. The line is decreasing from left to right. So that's a negative slope. And then a slope of 0 means that the line is perfectly horizontal. There's no increase or decrease as you move from left to right. Okay, so those are our three possibilities. Now this first question here is actually asking about the number. So remember, we can always pick the slope out of the line or the equation of the line because it's the number in front of x. So in this case, if the number is positive, then the slope is also positive. So this first line has a slope, a positive slope. Okay, and then if we move down to something like D, where you have a negative number in front of x, the minus here makes this negative, so that would have a negative slope. The only one that's tricky to pick out from an equation is the 0 slope. So if the slope is 0, that means that there's actually no x part in our line at all. So that would be like C right here. That only is just y equals a number. That is a situation where the slope is 0. Okay? So hopefully that gives you enough information that you can answer all of those questions. In the next one, you are given the actual lines are drawn. The only thing that's kind of tricky here is just like picking out which line is which. So A is this one right here, this slope right here. And we can see as we travel from left to right along that line, it's slanting down. So it has a slope of, or its slope is negative. And that's all you would need to write on that line, negative. Okay? If I look at line B, so that's this line right here, that line is increasing from left to right, so the slope is positive. And then of the 5 lines that are given on this graph, the only one that has a slope of 0 is the perfectly horizontal one right here. So E is the only one where the answer is the slope is 0. Okay, so you could write 0 on that line. Okay, and then if we look at this last question on this page about parallel lines have the same slope, which means that they're always traveling in the same direction. So if we want to, so the lines here are all labeled with capital letters, and we just want to pull out, we're identifying pairs of parallel lines. So we just want to pull out the capital letters that represent lines that are parallel. So if I look here, I think the most obvious pair, because they're so close together, are D and F. Okay, and we can see that those two lines, they're traveling in the same direction. Okay, they're slanting the same way. They're never going to cross each other. That makes them parallel. So one of my answers here could be D and F. Okay, and then you just have to pick out the other 2 pairs of lines that are parallel and write them on this. And there's no particular order you need to write them in. Okay, but your first answer there could be lines D and F. Okay. Now, this next page, so continuing with this idea of parallel lines. So here, instead of looking at the lines on a graph, we're looking at their equations. But remember, parallel still has to do with slope, okay? So lines traveling in the same direction are parallel. They will have the same slope, which means we're looking for that number in front of the x, and we're looking to see if it's the same number. So if I look at the example here, A, the slope of this line would be 2. And the slope of this line would be negative 1. Okay? Those are not the same slope. So this pair of lines, not parallel. So you could just write no here. Okay? I'll talk about B as well. So B, the slope of this first line here is negative 3. because that's the number in front of x. The slope of this line is also -3. Slopes are the same, so yes, these two lines are parallel. Okay, so see if you can apply that same idea to the other two questions. And then part 5, write the equation of a line parallel to each line. So here, we need to write the equation of a line that has the same slope, but we don't want the equation to be exactly the same, so we have to change the other number. Okay, so I'll flip over to my paper here. So the line I was given there was y equals 2x minus 5. A parallel line would have the same slope, so a 2 in front of the x, but then, oh, I spelled this wrong, but then it would have some other number at the end. Okay, so that's a line parallel to this one, to the original one. Okay, so just use that same idea. If we look at all these equations, we can see the slope on each one. So this one had a slope of 2. This one has a slope of 3/4. This one has a slope of -0.5. Your answers here are going to use those same slopes, but just change the number on the end to get the equation of a parallel line. Okay. This next example, I'm going to pause the video for a second and I'm going to copy this table onto my page and walk you through how to actually do the math here. Okay. Okay, so that's pair 1 copied out onto my page. So I want to figure out, excuse me, the rise of this line. So this is my first line here. I want to figure out the rise, which is just the change from one y to the next. Okay, and you actually don't need all of the information that's given here. You really just need 2 of the lines from the table. So I can see that from here to here, I'm going up by 2. So my rise is 2. My run is how much the x changes by for those same 2 lines. So from here to here, I went up by 2. From here to here, I went up by 1. So my run is 1. And then slope, one way of calculating slope is as rise over run. So 2 over 1, which I can simplify to just 2. Okay? I'm going to do the same analysis for here, and I'm going to use the top 2 lines once again. So there's all this extra information here that I'm just not going to use. So in the y here, I'm going up 2. So my rise is 2. And in the x, I'm going from -2 to -1. That is going up 1. So my run is 1. So my slope is once again 2 over 1 or just 2. If the slopes are the same, the lines are parallel. Okay? If I got different numbers here, then I would say that they're not parallel. Okay? So just 2 possible answers, really. One thing you want to look out for, sometimes when you write your slope as a fraction in this step, you'll get 2 different fractions here, but if you simplify those fractions, so calculate them out as a decimal, then they'll be the same. Okay, so you always want to take that final step of actually doing the division to get a whole number or decimal answer and compare those before deciding if it's parallel or not. Okay, but that gives you hopefully enough information to do the other 2 questions like that one. Okay, let's see what else we got. All right, on a job that takes him to Hamilton, Jim sees a sign warning of a hill with a 5% grade. The grade is the measure of the steepness, okay, so steepness is related to slope. Calculate the vertical change in a section of the highway that is 100 meters horizontal. Okay, so here, a 5% grade means that for every 100 units that you go horizontally, so in the horizontal direction, then you're going to go 5 units in the vertical direction. Okay, so what that would look like, I'm going to pause this once again so I can copy this table out, and then I'm going to just show you what it looks like on my paper. Okay, so this is the table just copied out onto my paper. So we've got our different horizontal changes here up to 500 meters, and we want to work out the vertical change. So what I said, a 5% grade means that every time you travel 100 meters horizontally, so sort of in the forwards direction if you're thinking of driving, then you're also going to be increasing or going uphill by 5 meters. So if you haven't driven at all, then you're also not going to have increased your height at all. So horizontal change of 0, vertical change of 0. But so 5% means 5% of your horizontal change. So here, if you've gone forwards 100 meters, you're also going to have gone up 5 meters. Okay? And then you can see it's proportional here. So if I add another 100 meters, if I add another 100 meters forwards, I'm going to add another 5 meters up. Okay? And then so if I add another 100 meters here, I add another 5 meters here. Okay, so that's my vertical change. Okay, and then I'll leave the last two blank just for you to try to fill those in on your own, continuing the pattern. Okay, so then the next thing it says is calculate the slope. And remembering, just like our last example, to figure out a slope, we really don't need that much information. We can look just at the rise and run between any two rows of our table. Okay, so just remembering that the vertical change, that's going to be my rise, and I went up 5. And my horizontal change, that's my run, and I went up 100. Okay, so then my slope is rise divided by run, which in this case is 5 over 100. Okay, or if I wanted to write it as a decimal, I could pull out my calculator, I would get 0.05. Okay, and then the last thing it asks us to do is to figure out the equation. Okay, and we have this sort of general way of writing an equation, y equals mx plus b. Okay, and y and x, when I'm writing an equation of a line, are always going to stay as those letters, but m is the slope. I want to try to fill in a number for that. And then b is the y-intercept. Okay, and we haven't spent a lot of time figuring this out, but in the coming pages it will come up again. So the equation for this line here is going to be y equals, and then the slope I calculated is 0.05. X. Now the y-intercept here, that's the value of y, which would be my vertical change, when x is 0. So this table happens to have a line where x is 0, so I can read the y-intercept out of it. But it's also 0. When x is 0, y is 0, so I don't need to put a number on the end here, so this is my whole equation. Okay, sorry, that came out off screen for a second, but that's a whole equation. I don't need to put a number on the end here. My y-intercept is 0, whereas my slope was 0.05. Okay, I'm going to call it there. Hopefully that helps you with the pages that I looked at. And then you might even want to look ahead to some of the other pages because there is related content. Let me know if these videos were helpful, if there's anything I could do differently for you, and then using that feedback, I'll decide how much more you want me to cover to support you for next week. Okay, so please take a look at the videos. Obviously you're working at your own pace, but let me know if they're helpful, if there's anything I could do differently, and then let me know of the pages that I didn't get to, which ones you would still like me to look at with you. Okay, thanks so much. Have a good weekend, Haley. I hope you're staying safe and healthy.